I'll go to the next one, and I'll want Kola to drive the discussion here. So in terms of the benefits of energy transitioning to renewable, globally, environmental concerns seem to be the loudest of the benefits. But can you shed more light on that? What are the environmental benefits? Are there other benefits to us, especially coming from developing world? Kola, take it away.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Bimbo, for the very comprehensive introduction. Now, when it comes to energy transition, it's something that, in terms of buzzwords, it's becoming a bit of a buzzword now, especially in the energy industry. And, it's all about us transitioning to more low carbon sources of energy. Now, the inevitability of energy transition is without dispute. It is inevitable. We will transition in our energy usage, in our energy mix over the next few decades. The days of having oil dominate and be the sole source of energy and be everything that we fight wars over, we create economic policies around, those days are coming to an end. Of course, they have not yet ended, but when you see the death knell has been sounded, then you know that it is time to start running in the other direction. Now, of course, a big part of what is driving this energy transition is what is happening with the climate. There's a lot of awareness around climate change, around global warming. And of course, there are a lot of targets that are being set in terms of how much temperature should be rising on a yearly basis in terms of percentage, on a decade or every decade, how much the global temperature should be rising, and it's rising at a faster rate than it should. And for us to reduce that, of course, we need to use more low carbon sources of energy. And that's the main driver behind the energy transition. It's also clear to the big powers or the big powers that oil is a finite resource. Oil and gas are finite resources, and they would eventually run out. And because strategically, a lot of economies and a lot of empires, as we might call them, do not like to think in decades. They think in centuries. So they think in terms of the last century was a century that many countries and many sort of empires were able to dominate based on their access to a cheap source of energy or a source of energy that was readily available to them. Now, it's important to know that energy might not be like sexy like technology, but it is vital. Without it, it is the backbone, the foundation upon which the global economy is built. And, like I said before, wars have been fought over energy. More wars will still be fought over energy. But as we transition into more low carbon forms of energy, it kind of reduces the need for a lot of the wars that we have been fighting, a lot of the difficulties countries have been having with each other in accessing oil, coal, and other very high carbon sources of energy. So energy transition is inevitable. Like I said, we're already in it. We're walking the pathway. It's not a matter of denying, or neither is it a matter of, is it happening now or is it happening tomorrow? It's already in progress. It is going to happen. What nobody knows is the speed at which it will happen. Now, the way the prices of renewable energy, the costs rather of renewable energy projects have dropped in the last 2 decades has not been predicted by anybody. Nobody predicted it would drop that fast. The advances in battery technology, nobody predicted how these battery technologies would be advancing at such a fast rate. Nobody predicted how lithium batteries would drop in costs so fast. Nobody predicted how metal air batteries could be announced. That was just announced like maybe a few weeks ago. And other battery solutions like that, saltwater batteries. And you see large oil companies rebranding themselves not as oil companies anymore, but as energy companies, because then they understand that there's a transition ongoing. I'm not going to stay in the past, because business is not done based on what happened before. Business is done based on innovation and what needs to happen in the future. So a lot of energy companies are rebranding, not just rebranding, they are pouring tons of money into renewable energy, not because they are trying to tick a box and not because the United Nations is forcing them to do it, but because they see the direction and they see that what we were doing for the last century will not carry us for the next century. And so these companies, these countries, they don't think in terms of 5 to 10 years. An issue we have in Nigeria is we are very short-termist in our thinking, maybe because we are still a quite young country. So maybe 50 years ago, we were still fighting a civil war or something. But these are countries, these are economies that they think in terms of centuries. So like I said, oil companies are investing more into renewable energy. Shell, for example, I think they spend about $2 billion every year on renewables. I see companies like Total buying renewable energy companies, buying solar panel companies, battery companies. So what I would say is the reasons behind the energy transition, of course, one is the climate change. And then two is the finite nature of the former sources of energy that we had, and the realization of the whole world that we cannot continue the way we have and we need to change. So we are now in a period of change. And like I've told a lot of people, change never announces itself. By the time you start planning for change, by the time you start doing change management, change has already occurred. What you are trying to do is to manage your response to that change. So right now, change has occurred, change has happened. We're just trying to manage our response to that change and midwife ourselves, basically transition ourselves in as seamless a way as possible into an inevitable future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kola. It's really eye-opening, especially when you talk about other areas where we stand to benefit from transitioning. In fact, most of your discussion did not even go to the climate, like I said, which is the loudest of the benefit that we hear in terms of why we need to go more renewable. And I think that actually shows our reality, especially the developing world. Concern is not, yes, we care about the climate, but that's not our biggest concern at this time. So thank you.